Hey, so I'm going to try out making a collage just to show you how I would think about doing that. Okay, I'm in my studio right now. Um, I have my easel set up. Okay, over here is a subject matter. This is the pear I'm going to be looking at today amongst my messy palette. Okay, and over here I have some papers that I've cut ready. Okay, to work with. All right, so I'm just going to set up so that you can see what I'm doing. Get my finger out of the way, and we'll take it from there. So like, yeah. Okay, so I got some PVA, got some paper that I cut. I'm gonna put the floor down first. Okay, so I've got my pear, and I'm gonna kind of create an imaginary version of it. It won't be exactly accurate because I don't want to be dealing with all the mess. It's in my studio, so it's gonna be a slightly idealized pear. So I'm just brushing some glue onto the back of this piece that I've extracted. These are all old pages, bits of colour that I found from Modern Painters magazine. Okay, it's probably the best use I've had out of those magazines, is using them as collage. Okay, not my favourite, but okay, let's stick this on. So I'm just locating that as a grey colour. Okay, underneath. And I'm going to work with a dark background behind that. Okay, there's a piece of black that I found. Okay, let's get that glued. I'm not being too fussy with the edges of this. If you were making a piece of work, you would think really carefully about that. Okay, whether you wanted it to have a clean, defined edge, or whether, like I'm doing now, you want it to look loose. Some images you allow it to look like collage, and in other images you want it to look more like a kind of real space that other people can enter, if you like. So I'm going to put this on as a background. I've got two clean edges here, okay, which will help me to kind of create a sense of distance behind the base that I'm working on. And this black will give me a kind of distant background. And that dark black should show up the kind of light fresh colours in the pear quite nicely. Okay. Now I'm going to start around the kind of darker edge of the pear. Okay, and try to define that. I've got this piece here. Okay, and when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at my pear, and I'm trying to think: are there any shapes, within this piece of paper that I can use to begin with? And my pear, as I'm looking at it, is curved that way. So I'm going to use that bit of drawing that's already there, if you like, and I'm going to just tear out from that the shape of the shadow with a little bit of extra in it, because I'm going to cover over it with a lighter colour and start to work out a kind of base colour to work my pear from. I'm being quite intuitive with it. And I've got that. I can put that on there and just look at scale. That works okay. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to put it to one side for a minute because really I need to do the shadow, under the pear before I do anything else. Okay, so I'm going to look through my bundle of greys here and see what I've got. And that one's probably the best. I'd probably prefer something a bit lighter than that, because it's very similar to the darker background. But I'm going to go with it because this is just a kind of quick run through. So I'm gonna eyeball my pear now and try and rip that shape that I want for the pear as best I can. You can see when I've ripped that, there's a white edge and there's an edge which doesn't have the white. Okay, as you work, you might want to be careful about that. Now, the top edge I pulled away that way, and the bottom edge I pulled backwards. Okay, So the tear happens on the other side. So if you want the white, you pull it towards you and you get the white edge. And if you don't want the white edge, you pull away from yourself and then you won't have it. I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm going to refine the edge of this a little before I stick it down. So just take a moment to refine what I'm doing. Yeah, that looks kind of what I want. Now most of the shadow is on the right hand side of the pear, so I need to come far enough across. And I'm just going to let that sit. I'm going to let that sit at the edge of the piece of paper that I've put down already, which was a kind of lucky accident, but I'm going to keep that. Let's see how that works. There we go. So I'm going to go around about there. I kind of want it to sit at the edge. Maybe a little higher. About there. Okay. So I'll stick that down. Now this middle section, middle to middle, I want to keep that fairly horizontal so that it looks like it's flat on the table. The anomalies around the outside can be kind of forgiven for the wonky shape of the pear. Okay. I'll go back to my green and start thinking about where I want that to sit. Yeah, probably around about there. Okay, so again, let's get some glue on there. And again, just rethinking that when I stick it down, get it roughly where I want it. Bends over quite a long way, but not past the outside left-hand curve. So I'm going to go with that. To try and keep the glue off the front of the image. I've been a bit scruffy there. I am rushing this somewhat. So try and keep the glue off the front. Okay, and it'll be a cleaner image. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to work with the light green on the other side. Now, this part of the pear is probably coming out a little bit too far. It's not ideal, that. And there's a couple of ways I can deal with that. I'm gonna draw with the paper. I'm gonna tear it so that I get the curve of the pear coming out here. Okay, so this goes out a little further on this side, which will bring this back. Okay, that should account for what I need to happen. But if not, I can try and find some of this black and just use it to paint that out, if you like. Okay, so I can see that already. I just need to think about where I tear from. Okay, that gives me the best amount of green that I can work with, and that works pretty well for me there. So I'm going to tear from the top there, and again start trying to find that shape. I'm doing this entirely just by guesswork, which is quite satisfying, I think. I'm going to, let's have a look, what do I want? That's that. That's okay, so I'm going to slim that down because my light area is thinner than the width that I have. And I can always add more of it later. So I want to try and do this in as few pieces of paper as possible. Just for the discipline of that, which I enjoy, I find that satisfying. So, and I'm going to pop that in around about there. You might prefer to work with scissors, give you a cleaner edge. I'm doing this today just by tearing. Okay, it's a looser process. It'll look more like paper than it will look like pear. And I'm being very simple with it. If I were to really want to work this up, I would try to find as many different colors of green as I could as a starting point. That's about right. I'm going to put that there. It's probably a little wider than I wanted. Okay. But there's the start of a pear-like form coming together. I'm going to fine tune the top now because there's a little curve on that. So I'm going to make a curved top. Really simple. Just tear that. Again, a little bit of glue. Okay, and then I'm going to look at, I think, what have I got here? I've got some grass here. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that slightly different green for the stem. I just need a little bit of that, and then ideally I need some brown. So I'm going to use a little bit of the green, different green, just so there's some variety. Now that comes across at quite the angle, which is nice. It's kind of extending the dynamic of the form. So I want to keep that, okay, that curve the way it sweeps around. Okay, I could change it if I wanted to because I'm making this. And there's a brown now at the top end of the stalk. So I'm going to have a quick look at my magazines. I didn't find any brown earlier, so let's have a quick look, see what I can find. That'll do it. So there's a face here, if you can see that. I'm going to use that, this flesh colour. That's going to look more brown when it's next to the green and on the black background. So I'm going to cut out what I want. Just tear out a sliver. There you are. It's a bit long, so I can just take a piece off. Yeah. There we are. That's a nice pear-like quality. When I look down the lower end here, I could do with a little bit more of the lime green. So I'm going to pop that in there. Let's bring that around. So I'll tear a bit more off. I don't want to go all the way down to the bottom because that's more of a shaded part. I'm going to use a slightly darker green. Okay. So there we go. I'm trying to line that edge up nicely. When you make this kind of work, it's going to look a little bit rough and ready. If you want it to look perfectly smooth, I think you'd probably be picking a different technique. Okay. When I look down here, okay, in real life, this area is really quite dark, but along the edge here, okay, and along the bottom, there's some reflected light. And this up here isn't as strong as this underneath. Now in my grass piece, okay, I've got much lighter and then a little bit darker here. So I'm going to use that to give me my two types of green for the reflected light. Okay. I didn't plan this, just so you know. I'm just responding to what I have and to what I'm seeing as I'm going along. So I just randomly found some greens and I'm just using what's here to figure things out as I'm going along. Yeah, it's a bit straight that. I'm gonna tear a bit more of a curve into it. Which means I lose some of the thickness, but I do want that curviness because it will help to sell the form just a little bit more. Where does that start? That's running from about there. Okay, This is my reflected light, so I'm going to take it right up to the edge, like that. So it's slightly different on that side. And then let's have a look at underneath. It's a little bit brighter there. Where have I put my grass? There it is. Okay, so grass is going to come underneath on this side and give me a different kind of reflected light underneath. So I'm going to try and eyeball that and tear the shape that I want as accurately as I can, without being too fussy, because this is a bold and broad piece of drawing. I don't need to be too uptight about it. Just check it out like that. It's a bit big, you can see that. So I'll adjust it. And I want that curve on the inside edge again, so I'm going to put that curve in. I want quite a wide edge as I come around, which I might need to supplement with a little bit more paper, but let's have a look. Yeah, that's okay. So look, that's a really quick kind of study of the pear. I feel as though I need some extra darks on it. Okay, so if I were to extend this now, okay, and develop it, what I would do, let's bring this over. Okay, what I would want to do, it's really bright in here, I can't see my screen, is to put some more highlights in here. So I'd work with a slightly cooler, more yellow kind of light, if I could find it. Okay, I'll have a look through some papers and look for some yellow, and I'd bring that in here. Okay, maybe some really pale ones to put some highlights in, some highlights along the top, so some little specks of that, and then some real deeper dark greens down here. I just find a couple of little pieces, maybe something light and neutral in this section as well, just to sell the turning between shadow and light. But that's a really quick kind of version of pear. Hope that's okay.